Hi, I'm Julie Cooper, a mystery and thriller writer, and half of the duo bringing you Kendall and Cooper Talk Mysteries, a regular podcast series. Before we begin, I'd like to give credit to my brother Chris Squires for our great intro and exit music. It's his original composition and performance of The Man in the Panama Hat. Now, I know Wendy's anxious to introduce our special guest, but first she's going to talk a little bit about this segment's theme, something fun.
Hello, this is Wendy Kendall, cozy mystery writer and mystery lover. Julie, the best mystery stories for me are those where I feel like I'm part of it. Although I'm reading, I like to discover the clues with the sleuth and name my own suspects and ultimately who I think is the guilty party. As a cozy mystery fan, I like to think that I could be the sleuth. Our guest today has treated me and hundreds of people to hours of enjoyment as a sleuth, immersed in a cozy mystery. Every February in the beautiful town of Langley, Washington on Whidbey Island, a crime story is played out by the community and all of us curious visitors who join them. We collect clues and see the created crime scene and talk to Langley residents who are playing the roles of witnesses and suspects. In fact, the pictures on today's podcast are from last year's event. On the left, I like to title it Evidence of Spring in Langley. On the right is everyone in the crowd gathered to hear the coroner's report, and on the bottom is the crime scene. The town mystery for the past 17 years has been written and created by our guest today, Loretta Martin. Welcome, Loretta, the mystery woman.
Thank you, Wendy and Julie. It's a pleasure to be here to talk mysteries, and especially the Langley Mystery Weekend with you and your listeners. And thank you, Wendy, for all the years you've been coming as one of the sleuths to solve the mystery. I hope you had fun.
I've always had fun. Thank you for the unique and wonderful mysteries you've created. Over the years, I enjoyed the mystery weekends thoroughly with my kids, with friends, and even just on my own. Still, I'm not sure that my description does justice to the fun of these events. How would you describe these unique adventures?
Well, they are a little different from the usual mystery-solving events. The Langley Mystery Weekend is the longest-running event of its type in the U.S. It started about 33 years ago in hope of bringing visitors to the town during the slow winter season, and also as a way for the locals to have a bit of fun. There's a lot of wild and crazy locals in the town of Langley. Yeah, especially way back then. It involves the whole town and local improv actors who play the suspects, and the shopkeepers, and the mayor, and even the police chief, and sometimes the sheriff's department. And unlike a lot of mystery events across the U.S., this is a family event. I try to write the story to appeal to both children and adults. And you kind of had a pretty good description of the way you play the mystery. You come into town and you pick up a mystery packet at the Chamber of Commerce. Your purchase brings you the newspaper and the map of the clues and pictures of all of the suspects. And then you wander around the town collecting the clues, and you visit the scene of the crime, and you interview the suspects. And when you think you know who done it, you return to the visitor center, and you bring in your guess. And if you are a correct guesser, you are up for a drawing to win through one of the 3 grand prizes. But even if you don't guess the right answer, you are still eligible to win small prizes like books, goodie baskets, and gift certificates.
It is so much fun. How did you get started writing these mysteries?
Well, actually, I fell into it because of a budget crisis.
Oh.
The Chamber of Commerce had been doing the mystery for about 15 years, and they lost their tourism grant, which helped them pay the costs for the event. And I had been the chamber director for about 1 year at that time, and it was my very favorite Langley event. And nobody in the town wanted to see it closed either. So I offered to do the writing and producing for free since I was already on salary, and I had some experience in writing and producing.
Ah, so sometimes the budget crisis can have a silver lining for those of us who love your plots.
It sure did for me because it's my favorite time of the year.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you, the humor in your mysteries just kills me. What's the key to getting humor to work in a murder mystery?
Well, as far as the Langley Mystery Weekend goes, most of the humor comes from the wild and crazy company of improv actors who play the suspects. They have great energy. They are very talented, and they're the ones that make it fun. They all have really good senses of humor. But as to a mystery murder in general, I think that is a very difficult balance for an author. And like humor in general, it kind of depends on the humor that the reader relates to, whether you think it's funny or disrespectful. For instance, I like Jon Stewart, and I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I thought they were both really funny. But my nephew, he laughs himself silly over Dave Barry and The Symptoms, which I don't get at all. So it it really depends on what the writer finds funny and what the reader finds funny, and they have to sort of meet each other to make the mystery funny. It's a collaboration between the writer and the reader, I think.
Nice. Well, how do you prepare your characters' actors for their parts so that they can improvise as your visitors like me? I mean, we're going to ask them all kinds of questions.
Well, again, it's very talented improv people. I write the story, and then when I'm writing the story, I'm thinking, probably after the basic story, I'm thinking of the actors that I have as long-time repertory company, if you would, and what kind of people they are best at playing. And then I write a very detailed biography of every single one of the suspects. And I give the actors these very detailed biographies, and this includes the backstory of their own history, their own family, their feelings, their talents, their anger points, all that kind of stuff. And they read their biography, and then they read the story, and then they read the newspaper articles that I write, and then they get the clues, and they're supposed to read all of those, not just the ones they're in. And they also are supposed to read the biographies of all the other characters, which include the relationship between the characters.
Wow.
And that gives them a really good basis to ad lib. Some of the actors have been playing suspects for the whole 33 years the mystery's been going on, so they're really good at ad libbing. But a good chunk of the actors have been in it for over 20 years.
Wow. Well, what part do you play on the Mystery Weekends, and why do you choose that part to play?
Well, most of the time I have only been doing the writing and the producing, and that's been true for the majority of the 18 years I've been working on this. But then 1 year, probably about 10 years ago, I thought that it would be a good thing for me to write a part for myself so that I could kind of get a feel for how the actors interact with the public. That year I played a psychic.
Oh.
And the experience did give me a much better insight into how the public approaches the actors. And that was valuable in the way I wrote the biographies for them to ad lib from. And I didn't write a part for myself again until last year. And then I wrote a part called Officer Polygraph, who was
I love that name.
Who is a She's a police trainee for the Langley Police Department. And that worked out really well for me, especially last year, because I was wearing in my costume a police issue hat that my nephew, who works for Como TV, got donated to him from somebody at a story he was covering. So he gave it to me, and I'm wearing this police hat, and I'm all dressed in black, and I have a fake badge on my collar. And we had an accident on 2nd and Anthus, if you may remember last year.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, so I just, after I finished with the scene of the crime and the coroner's report, I ran out into the street on 2nd and Anthus, and I started directing traffic so that the ambulance and the EMTs could get down there safely. And because I had the police hat and the police uniform on, everybody obeyed me. It was really funny.
That's really playing your part.
Yeah. And also, being the police officer, I don't have to be out on the street all the time. I can sit in the green room and talk to my actors and answer questions they may have that they didn't really think about, and then they're getting asked by the public, and they'll come back and say, how do I answer this? And then I can get out on the street too, but I'm not out there constantly. I'm available to the actors when they need me too. So it's working out to be a good part, and I'm going to play that part again this year.
Well, it's interesting. Your remarks sort of reinforce what Julie and I have talked about on a previous podcast, where there's really a valuable connection between writers who also act. There really is some insight there that you gain for your writing.
Yeah, I think so. I've never acted on a stage before, and I've actually never been in front of the camera. I've always worked behind the scenes. But I do think it helps to be close with and listen to the people who are in front of the camera or on the stage, or in this case, on the street, because it helps you feel the characters. My favorite part of this time of the year was the day that we have the costume reveal, which happened to have been yesterday for this mystery. And I walk in there and I feel like I am the luckiest writer in the whole world, besides maybe J.K. Rowling's, because I walk in there on costume day and I see my characters come to life.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Beautiful.
It is just, it's the best thing a writer can have, is to see those characters come to life. It's just wonderful.
Wow. You have a couple of, or more than a couple, you have some recurring characters. Can you tell us a little bit about a couple of those recurring characters that you've got?
Oh, sure. I guess the longest recurring character I've got is Isabella Bertha Fuzz, better known as IB Fuzz. And she's supposedly the world's shortest retired Texas Ranger.
Awesome.
Now, we invented her because she's only about 5 foot tall. And I created her character for the very first mystery I ever wrote 18 years ago. And she was so popular, we've brought her back every single year. She just turned 80, not the character, but the actor.
Wow.
And
amazing.
Yeah, and she's still out there every year. She just loves it. And she has had to cut back, so she has a sort of a headquarters where she sits and knits, kind of like Madame Lafarge. And she tells people that helps her concentrate and think about the clues that her operatives are bringing her.
Nice.
And then she also is the one that reads the solution play on Sunday afternoon. And then another character that's real popular is the coroner, and his name is Gus Gruesome. I'm glad I'm getting laughs from you guys.
Oh, I love him.
Okay, he's only a part-time coroner because Langley only has one murder a year. And the rest of the time he's a sausage maker and a newspaper delivery boy.
Perfect.
And his morgue is in the basement of the city vehicle repair shop on Dead Goat Road.
Oh.
And that is a real road on Whidbey Island, believe it or not. And then my favorite recurring characters are a crazy men's group called the 49ers Club.
Yes.
And that group always has some get-rich-quick scheme that they're trying to foist on the town every year. And they offer a real fun, silly counterpart to the mystery. And nobody takes them seriously. However, last year, one of them actually was the murderer.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got it wrong last year. I don't want to think about that. Well, how does Langley's setting influence your mysteries, especially in February of each year?
Well, the fact that Langley is such a small town, it only has like 2 main streets that are each 3 blocks long, it keeps the actors and the scene of the crime and the game site at the chamber office real close together and makes it easy for walking. And that makes everybody happier, and it makes my job easier. It has influenced the stories sometimes. Like this year, we talk about the forest out on Saratoga Road, which is part of the mystery. Last year, we talked about all the bunnies that have invaded the town, which had been getting a lot of national publicity last year.
I love that.
And and I loved the sweatshirt design last year too,
Yes.
with the bunny on it.
Yes.
But you know, the fact that I know the town well and that it has this beautiful location that's very compact makes that mystery easy to play. However, I also write a mystery for 2 towns that are combined in New Hampshire, all the way across the country. And those folks there who play the mystery have to drive to some of the locations. And that makes selection of the sites and writing the clues a little bit different, a little bit harder. And if it wasn't for Google Earth, I couldn't afford to write the mystery for New Hampshire because I'd have to fly there. And thanks to Google Earth, I could get a really good view of the town and where the different locations are and plot out how the people are moving around within the mystery.
Oh, interesting.
But by far, Langley's the easier of the 2 venues to write for.
Now, are you the only one who can know the actual guilty party in advance, or does the person who's playing the part of the guilty party know all along that they're the one, or are they surprised at the reveal on Sunday evening when the sheriff walks up to them and arrests them?
I get asked that question probably more than any other question that anybody asks me. The best advice I ever got was from one of the previous mystery writers, and she told me to be sure to keep the murder a secret from everyone until the very last minute, because she found out that in a small town like Langley, and I really know this if I had thought about it, people talk with each other, and so the more people that know the secret, the more likely it is to get out. And people will then share it, and pretty soon half the town knows the solution. So I don't tell the actors until late Sunday afternoon.
Oh, okay. Well, that's like real life. Everybody's talking with each other like that.
However, each one of those actors, in their biography, I give them a reason for why they might have wanted to kill the victim. So they know that they could be the murderer. And so one of the things I always tell the sleuths who are trying to solve the mystery is, don't believe everything you hear from the suspects on the street. After all, one of them is the murderer and has every reason to lie to you.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. I can say from firsthand experience. Julie, do you have some questions for Loretta?
I sure do. Loretta, I know you've been involved with this mystery weekend for a long time. Would you share with us a few more funny anecdotes about past mystery weekends in Langley? I'm thinking that with all the influx of visitors and potential sleuths coming into town on this weekend, that at least somebody would have called 911 because they thought they were being stalked or followed or something, right?
Well, nobody's complained about being stalked, but or stalked, however you pronounce it. But the police do get a few calls almost every year from tourists who will see the crime scene tape, which says police on it, which I set up either the night before or really, really early on the morning that the mystery starts. And tourists will be coming into town and they'll see this crime scene tape somewhere around town, and they'll call either the chamber or 911 or the police department and ask what the heck's going on. You know, this is supposed to be a peaceful little town, and here's all this big yellow crime scene tape hanging out.
Right.
That's the most common negative reaction. Most of the unsuspecting tourists, they just sort of get bewildered, and they kind of wander around seeing what are all these weirdos doing around here, and then somebody takes pity on them and tells them what's going on. The townspeople, they're pretty much, they know what's happening, and they either avoid downtown that weekend or they come down and join the fun by either playing the mystery or just people watching all the crazy characters.
Great. I think that's what I'd be doing. I'd be just reveling in it and just enjoying people's different reactions. But speaking of the locals, what kind of volunteer support do you have to mobilize for this kind of event? The planning and the logistics alone, in addition to all the writing and producing, must be just an enormous amount of work.
Yeah, it really is. And I have been very lucky that over the years, more and more people have come forward to volunteer. And once I left the chamber, then the chamber was a separate entity from me, thank goodness, and they could take over a lot of the coordination that I had to do in addition to doing the writing and producing. So I say I guess the major support has come from the chamber, who they coordinate the locations, like making sure that the theater is reserved and that the police chief is okay with the crime scene site, because I got in trouble with the police chief once for putting it where he didn't want it.
Okay.
And they do the publicity, and they coordinate the police officer who's going to arrest the suspect, because that's a real police officer or sheriff's deputy.
Great.
That started because the county sheriff, Mike Howley, actually was a mystery writer. He's got a couple mystery books published. My favorite is the one called The Double Bluff, and his main character is a woman police officer with the Seattle Police Department, and he writes a really good mystery. But anyway, he would volunteer to come and pick up the suspect each year, and he really enjoyed that. And then the chamber also sells the packets and arranges for the prizes and just a whole bunch of other things, too. And then we have a group of volunteers who like to be around the actors, and they help set up the green room and take care of it so the actors can rest during the day and get some water and maybe a little bit of candy to give them some energy. And we have volunteers who do proofreading and volunteers that help during the sales and pickup of the mystery packets. And I have one volunteer who helps me put up and take down the crime scene. That's my sweet hubby. But I think that most of the most important volunteers are the actors, because they contribute so much time and talent and energy every year, and they all make their own costumes.
Oh, wow.
And it's all volunteer, including their costumes. So they are by far the backbone of the whole mystery.
It sounds like it's completely a community event, which is really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question.
It's a real community spirit building event, as well as a good business building event, and also as well as a good fun event.
Absolutely. And especially nice to do during a time of the year where, let's face it, February weather in the Pacific Northwest is not always great. So that's wonderful. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Loretta. Of all the mystery weekends you've been involved with, which one was your favorite and why? It may be asking you, like, choosing between children, but which was your favorite?
Oh, Oh boy, I don't think I can choose just one. I have several favorites for different reasons. I guess the one I did the most giggling about was A Taste for Murder. The theme of that was a bunch of new restaurants coming into town, and it involved some really weird restaurants. For instance, there was a Mexican French fusion restaurant called Maxine's.
Goodness.
And they had items on their menu. We actually wrote a menu for them. Their menu had things like escargot mole.
Oh. Oh.
Doesn't that sound delicious?
Oh, that's cringeworthy, yes.
Yes, and then there was also a fast food restaurant, which of course Langley doesn't have, and this was an Atkins-inspired low-carb specialty fast food restaurant, and its most famous dish was deep-fried blubber on a stick.
Oh!
So you can see why that was the one I giggled the most when I was writing.
Absolutely.
And then I think I really loved Gone with the Tide because that was the most outlandish costumes that the actors ever came up with. And then my favorite weapons, I have a tie there. In Grounds for Murder, the victim was killed by a bag of, quote, leaded Chinese coffee that hit them. And in Death by Chocolate, the victim died from the chocolate banana slug slime, which is poisonous.
I see. Okay. Very creative. Another question for you. Do you have any sage advice for those who might be wanting to participate in their first ever mystery weekend in Langley? Sort of words to the wise for novice sleuths about things to bring or what to wear? Or...
Well, I think this is good advice for any mystery event that you might participate in, whether in Langley or whether at a bed and breakfast or a restaurant or a theater. First of all, don't take the event too seriously. I have, when I was chamber director particularly, I've had people call me. They didn't know I was the author, but they all call me and they would email me and they would say, I'm really angry because that was not the correct solution. And they will give me all these reasons why they're right and the solution was wrong.
Oh.
So they were really taking it way too seriously and they weren't having any fun. It got to the point where now when I write the solution that goes on the website for the chamber, I actually give them the clue numbers to tell them how they're supposed to come to the conclusion of who the person was that did the murder. So I don't get any more of those angry emails.
Good.
But don't take it too seriously. Have fun with it. The main point of these kind of events is to have fun with the actors and the other sleuths and just the interplay. And then specifically for Langley Mystery Weekend, I'd say my best advice is dress in layers because you never know around Puget Sound what the weather's going to be.
Right. Good. All right. And I know some of our listeners don't live on the West Coast, so do you have recommendations for other Mystery Weekend events in other parts of the country? I think you spoke about one or two that you're doing in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I'm doing one in New Hampshire. It's for a combination of two towns in the White Mountains ski area. So if you want to experience a Mystery Weekend that's closest to the Langley Mystery Weekend, it's an interactive town event, then I'd call the Greater White Mountain Chamber of Commerce in Lincoln, Lincoln, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, okay.
Yeah, Lincoln, New Hampshire. It's a pretty popular ski area there. So when I write for them, it's a little bit different. Like one murder was in cold mud because they call the April their mud season, and the mystery I write is in April. So it's that transition between the ski season and the hiking season in the mountains.
Okay.
The other, I've heard some really good things about a murder mystery series. I think it's a historic, based on historic events. It's at the Crystal River Inn in San Marcos, Texas. One of my players had gone to that before, and he has very high praise for it. They help the people who are going to be at the bed and breakfast actually play different characters in the mystery, and then they actually go to places like the burial site of the victim, and he says it's very fun, and it's 2 days long, and you stay at the B&B. But the thing is, there's mystery dinners and mystery weekends all over the United States at restaurants and B&Bs. It's really easy to find one. It's a very popular entertainment. The thing I would be careful about is most of those are geared towards adults. It's a little harder to find a mystery weekend or a mystery event that's geared towards children or is like ours, which can operate either level.
Right. That makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, if they want to do a family event, they really need to call the venue and ask the questions about whether it's appropriate for children or not. But there's a lot of them.
Good word of advice for people that might be looking for something that's family friendly and might get involved in something that's really not. So
yeah.
Very smart. And I'm wondering, would you be willing to give us any kind of a sneak peek into the upcoming mystery weekend that's scheduled for February 25th and 26th? Or if you tell us anything, would you have to kill us?
Well, it's not exactly like I'm part of the CIA like my cousin Sue was, so I don't think I'd have to kill you.
Okay,
that's what
good.
He always would warn me when we were at a family reunion. But anyway,
wow.
This year is kind of a weird one. The Langley Mystery Weekend this year combines a science fiction convention and a series of Bigfoot or Sasquatch sightings.
Ah.
And the first Bigfoot sighting occurs on New Year's Eve when a 12-year-old boy is riding his dirt bike in the woods, and he's rescued after he comes around a corner and crashes his bike and lands in a blackberry bramble. And when he starts to come to, he feels these big hairy arms lifting him out of the brambles, and he's lost his glasses, so he can't quite see. And when he finally finds his glasses and puts them on, he sees this big, hairy ape thing that's about 6'6" or more walking off into the forest. So he thinks he got rescued by a Sasquatch. And he comes running home and starts shouting all over the house. And his parents, of course, don't believe him. So he decides to post it on his Facebook page.
Of course.
Yes, of course.
Of course he does.
He probably Twitters it too, you know.
Yeah.
And then the story just goes viral. And so what happens to the poor town of Langley is that all these Bigfoot hunters start coming to town, and the local people keep saying, "Oh, we're just sure it's some kind of publicity stunt for the sci-fi convention that's coming." But Bigfoot hunters don't believe them. So we've got all these Bigfoot hunters around, and then we've got the sci-fi people in town trying to do their own thing. And then eventually on Friday morning, there is a big, furry, hairy, dead body found next to the post office on 2nd Street.
Awesome.
Oh, spooky. Okay.
And that's as much as I can say.
All right. Thanks for at least the sort of a sneak preview of that. That sounds wonderful. Wonderful. Well, speaking of fun and humor, I'm thinking of what a wonderful way humor can be used to engage readers or listeners when the subject is murder and mystery. And certainly Loretta's spoken about that for the event in Langley, but many of the books and films that Wendy and I review and recommend have at their heart that most horrible of human crimes, and yet sometimes that dark subject is leavened with touches of humor, something that really makes life bearable for the characters and even more memorable for the reader. If the mystery writer's successful in what they do, we, the readers, get those jokes and feel like insiders, which is really what every reader wants, along with the feeling that they could solve the mystery. I'm recalling the very witty off-color badinage and double entendres of Gabri, who's a character who's best described as the flamboyant owner of the local bistro in Louise Penny's Armand Gamache mystery series, as well as another character, the foul-mouthed Ruth, and she has consistently foul-mouthed vocabulary through most of the books, but she's a brilliant and elderly caustic poet who also resides in this very small village of Three Pines. And their quirky humor and their verbal fencing adds sharp flashes of light to what often can be the somber and emotionally wrenching subjects that Louise Penny writes about, subjects including betrayal, revenge, and murder. And I often think of the subtle dry wit of Dr. Watson, faced with working daily with a brilliant and narcissistic partner, Sherlock Holmes. And then there's the scalpel-sharp humor of Dr. Siri Padboon in the series written by Colin Cotterill. Even the titles of Colin's books are funny: Disco for the Departed and The Curse of the Pogo Stick, two among many. He manages cleverly to poke fun at aging, bureaucratic communistic rituals, and the clash of cultures, all set in late 1970s Laos. And last, there are the classics, such as Lord Peter Wimsey, the sleuth who entertains us by skewering upper-class British mores, often with a wink and very much tongue-in-cheek. Truly great social satire as well as mystery. I guess there's something to be said about those who can pursue evil while keeping a sense of humor and perspective about life's most difficult endeavors. And I'm going to turn it over to Wendy now.
Thanks, Julie. I've got a segment, All the World's a Stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. That's Shakespeare, who knew a little about engaging his audience, which varied from the groundlings to those in the best seats. And even hundreds of years later, his stories appeal to present-day audiences. Some say it's the rich language used. It's pretty amazing the number of his phrases and one-liners that have become household words. By the way, household words, that's from Shakespeare. Or how about, the first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers? Or am I the only one who uses that one? Well,
No.
How about more examples? I won't budge an inch. We've seen better days. It's Greek to me. Fair play. Foregone conclusion. Into thin air. One fell swoop. Or maybe it's not the language that particularly attracts you. Some say it's the complex characters and the basic themes of love, treachery, humor, bravery, and political intrigue that still resonate from Shakespeare. How does an author get a reader to feel like a player in the mystery when the story's on the page? Well, when it comes to authors, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. That's Shakespeare again. Well,
I relate to that last one.
There you go. Well, here are some tips that get me involved in a story that's on the page. 1, start the story in the action. I'm only going to give a book a short chance to grab me. After all, there's a lot more books in the store. 2, give me characters that I'm interested in. Give me some small indication about the character quickly that makes me feel I care about what happens next. But don't tell me to care. Don't tell me what to do at all, because I want to find my own way through the story. Show me honest feelings in the story and in the characters. Let me feel the author's passion, because if the author doesn't enjoy telling the story, why would I enjoy reading it? I feel Shakespeare has always done these things, and I find Shakespeare's plays engaging reading. But they are plays, and they were written to be experienced. I'll never forget the first time I saw a staged Shakespeare play. It was Othello. That's when I realized it was written to be experienced. So I'm encouraging Shakespeare readers to experience a staged version if they can. There's so many subtleties to the story that seeing enacted will bring it to life for you. Since that first play, I've been fortunate to see a play in Ashland, Oregon's Shakespeare Festival, and even a play performed at the beautiful theater at Stratford-upon-Avon. But the play's the thing, and it's at my local community Shakespeare company that I'm most fortunate to be able to attend so many Shakespeare plays that they stage. Good mysteries read are absorbing and engaging. Good mysteries played are involving. And Julie, also from Shakespeare, a beggar's book outworths a noble's blood. That's my way of asking, do you have a book recommendation for us today?
Actually, I do. And this time around, I'm recommending something light, funny, and frothy after dealing with some fairly heavy topics in a couple of our last segments. I've enjoyed the mystery spinning work of author Mary Kay Andrews, a Southern gal, who has been an antiques picker and interior designer. I knew there was a reason I really related to her. She's also a recovering journalist who reported on the trial made famous in the best-selling book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, one of my favorites. She's well known for her Callahan Garrity series. I think there are 9 or more of those books in that series at this point, which was written under her real name, Kathy Hogan Trocheck, Trocheck. And these feature Callahan, the cleaning lady sleuth, and are set in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a highly entertaining and bumpy ride of a series. She's also an Edgar Award nominee. The book I just finished is called Savannah Blues, and it's described on the cover as a novel of divorce, revenge, and great antiques. It features Eloise Wheezy Foley, recent divorcee and antiques picker who searches for treasures when not dealing with her loopy mother, her erratic, wealthy ex-husband, and a hunky gourmet star chef who was her first boyfriend in high school. This book takes us from the steamy back alleys of Savannah to elegant Southern Gothic mansions and drops us right into the middle of magnolia-scented murder with multitude of suspects. It's intriguing, sassy, and fun, just the thing for a beach read, or for when you're stuck on the bus or out on the tarmac in the midst of dismal winter weather. You can almost feel that warm southern breeze. Bring on the bourbon and branch water. Loretta, how about you? Do you have a book or TV series recommendation for our listeners?
Well, I'm kind of a domino reader, and what I find happens to me is I'll read one book, and then it will lead me into other books. For instance, about a year ago, I read David Morrell's Murder as a Fine Art, which is a very unnerving tale. But that led me to a historic book, which was kind of the inspiration for Murder as a Fine Art, Tom Quincy's Confessions of an English Opium Eater. And that got me interested in criminal psychology, so I picked up a textbook and I read that, believe it or not. However, specific authors that I love are, of course, the masters. I love Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Agatha Christie, and I reread them almost every decade. I like Sherlock Holmes for the forensics and the clues, and I like Miss Marple for the characters and the small-town plots, which I relate to.
Sure.
And the TV series Murder, She Wrote was kind of an inspiration, or is kind of an inspiration, for my village stories. As to contemporary writers, I really like Laurie King's series on Mrs. Sherlock Holmes. It started with The Beekeeper's Apprentice, and 2 of my favorites in that series are Oh, Jerusalem and A Monstrous Regiment of Women. She is one of the best Sherlock Holmes interpreters that I have ever read, and she does it with a very creative twist in the legend where Sherlock has retired to do his beekeeping in Sussex, and he runs into a young woman who becomes kind of his forensics apprentice, both in the beekeeping and as he investigates some murders. And as she grows up, they become closer and closer, and eventually they get married when she's in her 20s, and she travels around the world with him, helping him solve mysteries. It's kind of a women's lib thing, but it's very much based in the era of Sherlock Holmes, and yet she's just his equal in a lot of the solutions, and I find it a very, very well-written series. I think there are about 8 or 10 books in the series. And then I also like J.A. Jance's Detective Beaumont series, which was her first series of mysteries. She's has been doing some other books set in New Mexico, but I like her Detective Beaumont, which is set in Seattle, because I like his really quirky lifestyle, and I like his wry sense of humor. I am a big fan of characters with wry senses of humor that can laugh at themselves and laugh at the situations that they get into. That's my favorite kind of a humorous murder mystery.
Wow, ladies, those are all very intriguing recommendations. I can see that I need to hit the books again. For my recommendation, this is really for those of you who often find yourself reading a mystery and thinking, or even saying out loud, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I recommend Murdered by James Schenep, Schannep. This book is an adult's choose-your-own-adventure book, or as the author describes it, a click-your-poison book. Here, it's you who are the main character, and you make the choices that position you either to solve the mystery or to let the killer get away with murder. You don't read this book from page 1 straight through to the end. At the end of each scene, you're given choices of what you want to do next. Based on your decision, you're sent to different scenes on different pages in the book. How fun is that? You won't be moving. You're not going to move in page sequence. Your choices might send you from page 8 to page 298, and then choice there back to page 33. You won't know how close you are to the end of the story maze because your next choice could send you anywhere. The story progresses that way on, scene to scene, based on your action decisions. If you choose wisely, you can solve a murder. And when you're finally done, you can start over and experiment with different choices all along the way to create a different story. There are over 50 possible endings. As Deepak Chopra said, when you make a choice, you change the future. Murdered is just one of 5 exciting books by this author, and the most recent one is coming later this year and is titled Classically Marooned. Loretta, thank you so much for joining us today and involving us in your mysterious creativity. I just can't wait to go to Langley's 33rd annual Mystery Weekend, February 25th and 26th. My 15th year gathering clues, snooping around town, enjoying the stores and cafes, questioning suspects, and identifying a murderer. Julie, we don't have time now, but if I see you in Langley on Mystery Weekend, I might have a few questions for you.
All right. Loretta, thank you again so much. And I think it's just about time to wrap up our segment for today. We're going to go back out with more music from the man in the Panama hat. And again, keep listening and keep writing.